Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a very interesting, educational, terrifying, whatever you want to call it, upload to share with you. But before we get into this upload, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and now my merch store to help this channel to continue to grow and go. The links to those are in the description below. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. They were written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Alright guys, so throughout the couple of years that I've had this channel, I have had the privilege of narrating or discussing encounters from today's time to 1800s. But there was documented cases well before that. So today I want to take a look at some documented cases and cases that were mentioned in newspapers from well before the 1900s. I hope you guys enjoy this because I really think this is very interesting. One of the very first recorded reports of a cryptid was in South America in 1595 to 1596. Explorer Sir Walter Raleigh reported that he had heard from native people of the existence of a hairy man of the woods who was said to build huts in the jungle. Moving on, Nespelem, Washington, 1670. A Nespelem native who disappeared while hunting with a group about 1 year ago was found today at about the same spot he had last been seen. When approached, he was simply standing with his arms folded and his eyes staring straight ahead, as if in a trance. By his side was a dog that had been trained to bark once in warning, and then to remain silent. Upon regaining his senses, the native told of being captured and held prisoner by a group of hairy giants. He stated that he was not physically harmed by the creature, and shared their food and cedar bark shelters, almost as an equal. He described his captors as hunters of great physical prowess, able to scamper up steep slopes or shoulder heavy loads of game. Although not allowed to go hunting with them, he was allowed to travel around the mountains at night. He said they used whistling noises to communicate while hunting or on the move. Apparently, the creatures also possessed some sort of hypnotic powers, as he stated they put him into a trance before taking him to the spot where he was found. The dog by his side was a gift. This case was documented by a Nespelem woman who recalled the story, which was passed to her mother by her mother, and so on. She put the story at some 300 years. Moving on. Jesuit priest reports native fear of mysterious animal. Natchez, Mississippi, December 26th, 1721. Father Pierre Francois Xavier de Charles recently arrived reports of a great alarm in the settlement last evening. He was told that there was in the neighborhood a beast of unknown species, of extraordinary bulk, and whose cry did not in the least resemble that of a known animal. However, when he questioned the natives, None had actually seen the creature. They had estimated its size and strength from the fact that it had carried off some sheep and calves. Father Pierre suggested that the creature was probably a large wolf, but none could be persuaded in this regard. The creature was heard again, and the natives ran out armed with whatever weapons they could find, but with no purpose. That was a recording from the Father Pierre, his journal entry on December 26th of 1721. Moving on. Wild girl captured in local woods. Sioux Forest, Wisconsin, September 5th, 1744. Shepherds recently found and captured a wild girl about 16 or 17 years old in the forest. She was taken to a hospital. She has not spoke or gave any sign of recollecting the past. Fast forward, at some point, the girl let it be known that she had been left by some other little girls in the woods when she was about 7 or 8, having been surprised by snow. The hospital people gave her grass and vegetables to eat, but she continued to droop and in a short time died of grief for loss of her liberty. That was recorded by the Wisconsin Argus in Madison, Wisconsin. Sioux, Wisconsin, 1764. Wild man seen in the local woods. A very tall, strongly built, hairy like a bear, active as a lizard, perfectly harmless. His delight is in coursing the sheep and dispensing them, uttering loud peals of laughter at the confusion he creates. Sometimes the shepherds sent their dogs after him, but he never suffered them to come up with him. Nothing is known or has been traced respecting his history. It is assumed that he is some child left by accident or design in that savage solitude, where, like Orson, some bear nourished him, but never found a Valentine to restore him to humanity. About 20 years ago, a young wild girl was found in the same forest. She was captured and placed in the hospital where she died a short time later. Wisconsin Argus. Moving on. New World wild man arrives in France. France, January 1784. There's lately arrived in France from America a wild man who was caught in the woods 200 miles back from the Lake of the Woods by a party of Indians. They had seen him several times, but he was so swift of foot that they could be no means to get him. He was near 7 feet tall, covered with hair, but has little appearance of understanding, and is remarkably sullen and subdued. When he was taken, half a bear was found lying by him, whom he had just killed. Comment, it appears that this article that the reporter actually saw the creature when it arrived in France. No follow-up stories have come to light. The London Times published that article in 1784. Nootka Sound, 1792. New World natives express dread of monstrous creature. Jose Mazzino, a naturalist on a Spanish voyage of exploration, reported that native people on the Pacific coast of North America have a strong belief in a terrifying creature called the matlocks that are said to inhabit the vast forest here. Mazzino states, I don't know what to say about the matlocks inhabiting of the mountainous district, of who all have a unbelievable terror. They, the native people, imagine his body as very monstrous, all covered with stiff black bristles, a head similar to a human one, but with much greater shape and stronger fangs than those of a bear, extremely long arms and toes and fingers, armed with long curved claws. He shouts alone, they say, force those who hear them to the ground, and any unfortunate body he slaps is broken into 1,000 pieces. That was from an actual account of the Nootka Sound, obviously from Jose Mazzino. Jasper, Alberta, 1811. Monster Tracks Puzzle Explorer. Geographer and explorer David Thompson reported the discovery of an unusual footprint found in the snow. The snow was about 6 inches deep on ice, and the prints measured about 14 inches long by 8 inches wide at the widest point. There were 4 large toes, about 4 inches long, and each one had a short claw. The ball of the foot sunk 3 inches lower than the toes. The prints were headed in a southerly direction, and Thompson estimated that they had been made about 6 hours before he arrived. He believes the prints were those of some monstrous bear. Now, it is unlikely the tracks found by Thompson were those of a Sasquatch. Generally, this creature has 5 toes and claws are not evident. However, other 4-toed tracks have been found, although known of only one other case where claws or nails were indicated in possible Sasquatch tracks. Unfortunately, Thompson does not indicate whether the prints were those of a creature with 2 or 4 legs. Nevertheless, he mentions there were possibly bear prints. 4 legs are indicated. Not really. Could have been a Dogman, very simply. I've seen a lot of tracks, and I'm sure a lot of you have on the internet, but until we have a track or a foot in front of us, we will honestly never know what we are looking at. You know, they could be made by some weird dude brewing frickin' happy juice in the woods, you know, just to keep people away, or growing the green ganja. You know, who knows? But I really think this case was definitely a Dogman, just because how they described the ball and the 4 clawed paws. Now, a bear, I'm guessing, would have a different pattern than a dog, but for some reason I think they have 5. I'm not sure. Yes, I was right. I just looked it up. They have 5, and a ball is really not noticeable. It's like a pad. So on this one, maybe I'm right. I don't know. Just a inkling. Moving on. Tugaloo River area, South Carolina, 1816. A monster animal. He was 7 feet high, covered with hair, and walked erect. A native hunting party reported shooting a monster animal in this region that was most unlike other animals. One of the hunters related that after establishing a camp east of the Tugaloo River, they all went hunting, leaving a deer they killed the evening previous at the camp. At night, when they returned to the camp, the deer was gone, and the next day the same thing was repeated. They then decided to leave an old Indian to guard the camp and see what was happening to their deer. That day, the old Indian saw a monster animal come and carry off the deer, and was afraid to make any attempt to kill the monster, which was about 7 feet in height, and walked erect like a man, hairy all over, and its mouth was in the chin, and great claws on the fingers and toes. The next day, all 7 of the Indians stayed at camp, and as usual, the monster came, gathered up the deer, and started off. When one of them fired at it, the ball taking effect in the back, the animal dropped the deer and turned and started toward them, when the other 6 poured a volley into the breast and fell dead. About 3 hours after that, the Indians heard a noise like one howling about a mile in the distance. Yahoo, Yahoo, Yahoo! The Indians left camp and called on a posse for protection. A party of whites on horses, with all the dogs they could get, then went in search of other animals and found it. It was like the one the Indians killed, and putting the dogs after it when it appeared in sight. The animal would run, but it could whip every dog they could get to attack it. The party pursued it to the river, and at 2 jumps it went across, where it was then shot. The original time frame and place of this article was during the time the Indians were in the South. The area was where the incident took place was home to the Cherokee, who gave up their lands in treaties signed in 1777 and 1816. This was actually reported in 1889 in the Evening Gazette, Reno, Nevada. A wild animal like a baboon seen, Appalachian, Florida, June 1818. Dogman time in the news, yeah. Sorry, guys. The Appalachian Gazette states that the habitation of some unknown animal has just been discovered in the upper part of the Appalachian, which has given rise to many strange conjectures. The animal at the time of the discovery was in it, but made its escape. It is said by those who saw it to resemble somewhat of a baboon. For the size of the nest, it is judged to be 5 feet in height, and a carnivorous, as many bones were found about the premises. The nest was nicely made of loose cotton between several bales. Reported in the Edinburgh Advisor, Florida, USA, July 21st, 1818. Another wonder, Sackett's Harbor, New York, August 30th, 1818. Reports say that in the vicinity of Ellisburg was seen on 30th by a gentleman of unquestionable veracity, an animal resembling a wild man of the woods. It is stated that he came from the woods within a few rods of this gentleman, and he stood and looked at him and then took his flight in the direction which gave perfect view for him for some time. He is described as bending forward when running, hairy, and the heel of the foot narrow, spreading at the toes. Hundreds of persons have been in pursuit for several days, but nothing further is heard or seen of him. The frequent and positive manner in which this story comes induces us to believe it. We wish not to impeach the veracity of this highly favored gentleman, yet it is proper that such naturally improbable accounts should be established by the mouth of at least 2 direct eyewitnesses to entitle them. The Exeter Watchman, New York, New York, September 6th, 1818. Northern Carolina, 1820. Native art depicts cannibal monster. David Cusick has depicted what he terms as a cannibal monster in one of his unique drawings. In his artwork shown here, an ominous creature is seen watching a native woman parching acorns. It is frightened away because it thought the woman was eating red-hot coals. Natives have long believed in the existence of such creatures and often depict them in their art. The Hancock House Publishers. This was in British Columbia. Mountain monster mystifies huntsman. Appalachian Mountain, May 10th, 1829. Messiah Browning, a huntsman, tells of a strange encounter with an unusual beast while out hunting in the local mountains. Browning stated, "I saw a bear coming to his feeding place, and such a looking animal I had never seen in my life. He was long and tall, and his back bowed up like a fighting hog. His legs looked like a naked man's arms, and he walked along as if he scarcely felt the ground. Fact, he was the poorest looking beast I had ever seen. He came out until he reached the tracks which I had made in the forepart of the day. When off, he broke. I sent 2 good dogs after him, and in a few minutes they were out of hearing. But in an hour or 2 the dogs returned, completely tired." Browning recounted another incident that night, or early in the morning, this time concerning an unusual forest sound. He tells us, "Sometime late in the night I was awakened by the most frightful noise I had ever heard in my life. It was as loud and harsh as a lowing of an ox, and seemed to echo from the other side of the hill on which I was camped, and the whole space above seemed to resound with noise. It continued for 20 minutes, as near as I could judge, and seemed to die away by degrees, until all was again quiet. I suppose then, and yet think, that it was caused by 2 old male panthers, which had met and got into a fight, and being of the cat species, they make similar noise, only much stronger and coarser, but I can't say for certain what animal made that noise." That was from 1829, 4 years of Life of a Hunter, the autobiography of Messiah Browning, Appalachia background. Merrill County, Ohio, 1829, was Ohio an abode of giants. Abode. Construction workers building a new hotel in Chesterville are abuzz this morning after making an unusual discovery. The workers dug into a nearby native burial mound to get material for making bricks and uncovered a large human skeleton. Practically noteworthy was a jawbone which was larger than the jaw of a notable large-jawed local citizen. A local physician examined the cranium and reported that it was proportionately larger and had more teeth than the white race of today. The skeleton was taken to Mansfield for further examination. You know what's very interesting is that how crazy, we're going hundreds of years back, obviously, but how strange people talked and just how, almost I don't even know. We're in 2021 and everything is politically correct nowadays, but Jesus, in 1980, 85, we'll say, I was 10, and I knew right from wrong and what was right to say and not right to say, and, you just, very strange, but it was, acceptable. Why say more teeth than the white race of today? Why not human being? Fucking idiots. Anyway, moving on. Sorry, guys. That came to us from the history of Merrill County and Ohio in 1880. Rare specimen of American antiquity. New York, March 1831. Benjamin Harding of Missouri claims to have uncovered a skeleton of a giant while in western country. He wrote to the Dr. Mitchell informing of his discovery. The following is the exact letter, which is dated Missouri, March 16th, 1831. Respected Sir, permit me to commune with you on the subject of the natural American relic of iniquity. It is the skeleton of an individual of the human race measuring nearly 10 feet, which I have discovered in the western country. Should you think it worthy of a place among the rarities of the land, I'd be pleased to inform me. The Feed and Burn Censor, New York, reported on the find as follows from this account. New York, May 18th, 1831, a human skeleton measuring nearly 10 feet in length was discovered in Mississippi a short time since by Mr. Benjamin Harding. There were giants in the land in those days. Genesis. Strange creature seen in the Himalayas. Walk on two legs. Himalayas, 1832. Native hunters in this region reported that they encountered an erect, tailless creature with long, dark hair all over its body. Believing that it was a demon, the hunters fled in terror. It is thought the creature was an orangutan. This is from the German Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. Odd creature spotted. St. Francis Poinsett and Greene Counties, Arkansas, 1834. A hair-covered creature of gigantic stature had been seen in the counties by sportsmen and hunters. There is no speculation on what the oddity may be, but it is very different from other animals common to the area. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, they have no idea, really. I mean, the country was still like brand new, like could it be natural here? Oh, no, it's huge and it's going to eat your children. Run. Just kidding. Holy shit. Sorry guys for the humor. This was from the Memphis Inquirer, Memphis, Tennessee, 1851. Moving on. Whistling Wild Boy of the Woods, Southwest Bridgewater, August, 1837. There is considerable talk about a strange animal said to have been seen in the area, although the individual who described the animal persisted in declaring that he had seen it and was at first considered frightened by it. The story was heard and looked upon more as food for the marvelous than as having any foundation in fact. He represented the animal as we have it through third person, as having the appearance of a child, 7 or 8 years though, somewhat slimmer and covered entirely with hair. He saw it while picking berries, walking towards him erect and whistling like a person. After recovering from his fright, he is said to have pursued it, but it ran off with such speed, whistling as it went, that he could not catch it. He said it ran like the devil and continued to call after the name. This came from the Spectre, Montrose, Pennsylvania, 1837, and the Dorchester County, Maryland, from 1838. This is interesting, though. Harry Whistling Wild Boy dodges bullet, Silver Lake Township, Pennsylvania. A youth, some 16 years old, working on a backwoods near New York state line, is greatly perturbed over an unusual incident. He heard someone approaching him, whistling merrily, whom he took as younger brother. It approached within 16 feet and stopped, wherein the youth looked upon it. To his amazement and utter shock, he gazed at something that had the appearance of a human, but was covered in black hair. In size, it was about the same as his 6 or 7-year-old younger brother. The youth had a gun, but it was some distance away. He quickly ran over, got the weapon and fired at the creature, but was trembling so much that he could not hold the gun still. Just as he fired, the creature stepped behind a tree, then darted off, whistling in the same manner as it approached. The youth's father stated that his son was greatly frightened by the incident, that a number of times during the afternoon, when thinking about the animal he had seen, the youth would burst out and cry. Once again published in the Dorset County, Maryland in 1838, and in the Spectre in Montrose, Pennsylvania, 1837. Ape-like creature and cubs captured along the Mississippi River. Upper Mississippi River, April 1st, 1839. Mr. Robert Lincoln of Boston and his timber survey crew, Western Lumber Company, recently captured 3 unusual ape-like creatures along the Mississippi River. The creatures, 1 adult and 2 cubs, were encountered during a surveillance for lumber prospect in the area. As it happened, the adult creature was sighted a couple of times, and Lincoln gave orders to capture it alive if possible. As he was giving his orders, the creature appeared at some distance, and Lincoln observed it with his pocket glass, a handheld telescope. Lincoln estimated its height at between 8 and 9 feet. The group pursued the creature, which at one point turned upon them, so Lincoln shot it in the calf of the leg with buckshot. The creature was bound and taken back to camp. The next morning, 2 cubs, about 3 feet high and very similar to the large creature, wandered into camp. The cubs were captured without resistance, and when the adult creature, probably a parent, saw them, reacted violently. Lincoln took the creatures to Boston, where he invited Boston Times people to see them. A Times reporter, an old acquaintance of Lincoln, went with another newspaper people down to Lincoln's rooms to examine the creatures. The reporter provided the following description of the adult creature. He is a horrid-looking creature, and reminds us very strongly of the fabled satyrs, as we have pictured them in our own mind. He is about 8 feet 3 inches when standing erect, and his frame is of giant proportion in every part. His legs are not straight, but like those of other 4-footed animal, and his whole body is covered in hide very much like a cow. His arms were very long and large and ill-proportioned. It does not appear from his manner that he ever walked on all 4s. The fingers and toes are mere bunches. Armed with a stout claw, his head is covered with thick, coarse black hair, like that of a mane on a horse. The appearance of his countenance, if such it may be called, is very disgusting, say almost horrible. It is covered with a thinner and lighter coat of hair than the rest of his body. There is no appearance of an eyebrow or nose. The mouth is very large and wide, very similar to a baboon. His eyes are dull and heavy, and there is no indication of cunning or activity about them. Mr. Lincoln says it's beyond dispute carnivorous, as he universally rejects bread and vegetables, and eats fish with great. He thinks he is of the orang-outang. Very interesting how they spell it. They spell orangutan like this: O-U-R-A-N-G-O-U-T-A-N-G. 2 separate words. Orang-outang. Dummies. But from what we have seen, we are inclined to consider him a wild animal, somewhat resembling a man. He is, to say the least, one of the most extraordinary creature that has ever been brought before the public for any part of the earth, or the waters underneath the earth, and we believe will prove the difficult puzzle of scientists. He lies down like a brute and does not appear to possess more instinct than common domestic animal. He is now quite tame and quiet, and is only confined by a stout chain attached to his leg. It is Mr. Lincoln's intention to submit this animal, to the inspection of scientific for a few days, in order to ascertain what they are, and after that, to dispose of them to some person for an exhibition. Mr. Lincoln himself will return to St. Peter's in the course of 2 or 3 weeks. This was published in the Boston Times, Massachusetts, USA, April 1st, 1839. Wild Child, Fish Lake, Indiana, December 4th, 1839. Strange as it may appear, it is certainly reported and very generally believed that a wild child or lad is now running at large among the sand hills round and in the vicinity of Fish Lake. It is reported tobe about 4 feet high and covered with a light coat of chestnut-covered hair. It runs with great velocity, and when pursued, as always has often been the case, it sets up the most frightful and hideous yells and seems to make effort at speaking. It has been seen during the summer months running along the lake shore, apparently in search of fish and frog, and appears to be very fond of the water, for it will plunge into Fish Lake and swim with great velocity, all the time whining most piteously. That's crazy. Wow. That was from the Adams Sentinel, Pennsylvania, December 30th, 1839. Very interesting here, too. Hair-covered wild boy outpaces pursuers, Fish Lake, Indiana, December 28th, 1839. A wild boy about 4 feet tall, covered in chestnut-colored hair, has been sighted among the sand hills around Fish Lake. It has also been seen running along the lake shore and plunging into the lake, swimming very rapidly, and all the time whining most piteously. Visitors at the location have chased the oddity many times, but it runs far too fast for them to capture. It reportedly makes frightful and hideous yells when pursued. Unknown animal habitation discovered, Apalachicola, Florida, May 7th, 1840. The habitation or nest of some unknown animal has been discovered in the upper part of Apalachicola, which has given rise to many strange conjectures. The animal at the time of the discovery was in it, but made its escape. It is said by those who saw it resembled somewhat of a baboon, and from the size of the nest it is judged to be about 5 feet high, carnivorous in description, as many bones were found among the premise. The nest was nicely made by loose cotton between several bales. This once again is talked about a while ago, but published again in May 7th of 1840. Natives complain of big-footed, foul-smelling thieves. Spokane, Washington, 1840. Some kind of creature has local natives upset and constantly on guard. Whatever it is steals fish from other nets, leaving footprints about 18 inches long, and an intolerable odor that lingers in the area. That was from the diary of Akaya Walker. Warriors kill strange creature, junction of the Yass in Murrumbidgee Rivers, Australia, 1840. Henry Williams reported seeing a large group of warriors kill a strange creature, now considered the Yahweh. On a hillside, they dragged it down the hill by its ankles. He described it as like an aboriginal, but covered all over with gray hair. That was just from his journal. Natives express belief in giants. Washington State, 1840. Spokane natives in eastern Washington have expressed the belief that a race of giants inhabits a certain mountain in the region, situated to the west, that is continually covered with snow. They say that it frequently steals their salmon, which it eats raw, and is identified by its 18-inch footprint. They have learned to know when it is near because of its intolerable odor. Once again, from the Diary of Akea Walker, 1840. Unusual monster killed in local forest. Russia, 1845. A hunting party led by Falei Lykasev reported that they had killed an unusual monster. They stated that its frame was human-like, with a height of about 7 feet. As to its facial features, they said one eye was on the forehead and the other on a cheek. Its skin was rather thick, with a coat similar to sable. Its cheekbones were bare, and on its fingers were claws. It had no toes on its feet, and it had pointed heels. They observed that it was a male. They split open the body and noted that the blood was blackish in color. They left the body unprotected and reported the incident to the territorial police officer, giving him instruction on how to find the remains. However, the local inhabitants refused for a long time to show him the place where the creature had been killed. They finally led him to a meadow on which there was no trace whatsoever of the creature. A retired police officer, Andrei Sasquatch, sent a report of the incident to the Berezki Territorial Court in December 16th, 1845. Fast forward, in the late 70s, the Russian hominologist Dmitry Banov stated the following regarding the incident. Policeman Andrei Sasquatch, who reported the event, did not himself see the monster, but relied on the words of non-Russian hunters who probably spoke Russian badly, and that was one of the reasons for the unnatural things in the description of the creature. Race of different species reported in the Pacific Coast Wilderness, Mount St. Helens, March 26th, 1847. Explorer and artist Paul Kane arrived in the Mount St. Helens area today and was surprised to learn that the mountain has never been visited by Europeans or native people in the past. He tells us that the natives believe the mountains is inhabited by a race of beings of a different species called the Skookams, who are cannibals. The natives hold these creatures in great dread, so they do not venture too near the mountain. The natives further state that there is a lake at the base of the mountain with an extraordinary type of fish. It has a head resembling that of a bear. These stories come from one of their people who went to the mountain with another and escaped the fate of his companion, who was killed and eaten by the Skookam. Kane offered a considerable bribe to any native who would accompany him to the area, but none were hardy enough to go with him. In 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, totally changing the entire landscape. The mountain is still restless, and another eruption is expected. The whole region continues to be a prime area for Sasquatch-related incidents. One can easily see how it becomes forbidden territory for early First Nation people. Source: Paul Kane, 1847, Wanderings of an Artist Among the Indians of North America. Fearless dogs fear a hairy man. Cunningham Creek, Australia, 1848. A shepherd in the employ of W. Sutton claimed that he saw a hairy man in the scrub north of there. He said that it walked upright and that his dogs, which hunted everything on sight, ran back from the creature, which all had their tails between their legs. Odd creature, that source was from the Lismore Northern Star, Australia, May 17th, 1878. Odd critter, seen in the swamp, Eagle, Oklahoma, May 1849. Mr. Boscombe, commonly known as One-Eyed Boscombe, reported that he saw an odd critter in the swamp southwest of here that he could not identify. It had stooped posture, long arms, and was covered in grayish-black hair. It fled on a strange, loping gait. Alright guys, well, I hope you enjoyed the kind of historical news pertaining to cryptids. I really enjoy stuff like this. I find it interesting because a fascination of these creatures I've had for years. I've been fascinated with the paranormal. Even before my encounter, I was encountering other strange phenomenon, and just fascinated with everything like this. So having older or very old news clippings or accounts just kind of blows me away. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing this with you. I've got a very interesting one that I may share later in the week. I don't know. I hope you guys liked it. And if you did, let me know and I'll do another batch. With that, I'm going to bid y'all farewell. Thanks.